Good afternoon, Britain. It's 39 minutes past 1, and these are the scenes from both Madrid and Brussels, where farmers are protesting in numbers.
Yes, they are indeed. It comes as EU agricultural ministers meet to discuss responses to the current crisis that the sector is facing. Now, farmers are breaching police cordons. You've got them storming city centres. You can see on the left, that is in Madrid. Huge numbers of protesting farmers. A massive tractor going through the middle of the main city centre there. They're protesting EU anti-farming policy.
Well, what exactly does this all mean? Why are they out there? And could we see this happening in the UK too? Let's discuss this now with Andrew Meredith, who's the editor of Farmers Weekly. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us here. First of all, what are the grievances that European farmers have? And do British farmers feel the same way?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. The European farmers and the British farmers have similar but not identical grievances. I think over in Europe, we've seen the protests since the beginning of January over a multitude of issues. It's effectively a collective howl that the process, the business of producing food is becoming harder, and they're getting less money for it, whether that's because supermarkets are imposing harder terms on them or because the regulatory burden of environmental red tape is getting higher and higher, or because the trade deals from outside of the EU are letting in food that it costs less to produce. All of that is coming together. And I think now that the genie is out of the bottle with protests having taken place, the threshold for more protests taking place gets lower and lower each time. Here in the UK, we're predicting, or we're hearing, that there could be a protest of up to 15,000 Welsh farmers in Cardiff this Wednesday. So watch this space as to whether those ambitious projections from the organisers come to pass or whether it'll be a much more muted affair. But farmers will be gathering outside of the Senedd in Cardiff Bay this Wednesday. That's what we're hearing today.
Wow, so we could see 15,000, up to 15,000 Welsh farmers protesting too, demonstrations like this with their tractors, perhaps?
I don't know the extent to which they will seek to disrupt in this way. I certainly wouldn't anticipate that they're going to be careering through police barricades or disrupting the peace in general. The protests so far have been very peaceful, very law-abiding. I'd imagine they'll be on foot around the Parliament building there rather than blocking the roads by and large. But we have seen small-scale tractor protests in other parts of Wales in the last week or 10 days, but no indication and no appetite from the organisers that I speak to anyway, that they want to escalate things in the way that has been seen in France or here in Brussels today.
Andrew, we saw Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, join one of these Welsh farmer protests last week. Pretty extraordinary scenes. Why is it that Welsh farmers seem to be more irate than English farmers?
So since Brexit, agricultural policy, by and large, apart from trade policy, is devolved. So the policy that the Welsh Labour government is formulating is different to the Tory government in Westminster, while the English government is further down the line and imposing some quite harsh cuts as they transition to a new type of environmental policy here. English farmers can see much more detail about what's coming down the road, and they've had longer to prepare for it. In Wales, it's been a much messier affair. There's been 3 consultations now on the environmental policy that will provide money to farmers in the future. There have been 3 consultations because nobody can agree on what they want to do, how much money they're willing to pay for these actions. And the worst case projections in Wales are that the scheme in its current iteration, although it's not been finalised, would see money taken out of farming, projected job losses, and an altogether weakened farming system in Wales. And farmers are just really, really worried about the future, their livelihoods, and their ability to hand on their farming businesses to the next generation.
And Andrew, we've also seen very recently, actually, farmers on their tractors staging a slow protest by Dover, in the port of Dover, haven't we? So we've already seen a start of these types of protests in England.
We have. My analysis, Farmers Weekly's analysis of it, is that anger on average here in England, as I say, is much lower, but that does not mean it is non-existent. That protest in Dover was very much focused around trade issues. We signed trade deals, obviously, since Brexit with Australia and New Zealand with different terms, and it will gradually become almost unfettered access for Australian beef and New Zealand lamb. Were those negotiations taking place today? I wonder, would the government have had the courage to sign it on the basis that they did? I would be very interested to look through those sliding doors into an alternate reality and see if they had been delayed, whether they would have got over the line. The Boris Johnson government obviously signed those. Rishi Sunak, he has struck quite a different tone with the farmers. Boris Johnson was quite dismissive on a number of occasions, but Rishi Sunak really trying to make political hay now out of the fact that a Labour government in Wales has really upset the farmers. He wants that rural vote of the general election, so he's doing all he can to put his arms around rural voters and farmers in particular at the moment.
Yeah, it's fascinating you say that both England and Wales are pursuing these sort of environmental policies, these replacements for the Common Agricultural Policy. But in England, it seems to be less harsh, or at least more predictable, than the worries in Wales. Do you think that's because Rishi Sunak represents a very rural constituency in Richmond, in North Yorkshire? Or why is it that England and the government here has seemed to have got it better with farmers than the Welsh government?
The formulation of these goes right back to 2018 or even before, when Michael Gove sat in the Department of Environment, Secretary of State's chair, and when there was Therese Thingamy-Bob. That's how many prime ministers we've had. I can't remember her surname now. Theresa May, there we go. Theresa May was the prime minister. Look, we've had longer to prepare. There are some harsh cuts. A farmer that was earning £40,000 in area payments 3 years ago will have got £25,000 in last December in their annual payment. By 2028, those area payments will have completely gone. But what is mollifying arable farmers in particular is the fact that they can see this suite of options, whether it's planting wild bird food, whether it's farming in an environmentally kind of way, but less ploughing, for example, reducing fuel emissions. They know the payments they're going to get for that, and they have access to that detail, as I say. But the upland farmers in England, they are still concerned there is much less on offer for them. And so there is still a few hurdles for the government to clear here, I think, before they can conclude that farmers really are happy with how things are going.
Well, Andrew Meredith, editor of Farmers Weekly, really appreciate your time. Thank you for talking us through those thorny issues there facing farmers.
I can't condone Belgian farmers spraying manure at police, though, I must say, and that's what they have been. Quite funny, yes, but if they were just Stop Oil activists, you'd be fuming about it.
That's true. No, the lawless protest should never be encouraged.
Although the police are baton-wielding.
But it is fascinating, though, the way in which these policies can be implemented and predictability can matter so much. Ultimately, I don't think anyone appreciates the old EU system of just paying people simply for having a farm, rather than the way in which you conduct your farm. I mean, it's almost giving people more money for owning more land. That was a terrible system. So I think we're moving to a more rational system, perhaps, but clearly not in Wales.
Well, there you go. He said 15,000 farmers could take to the streets, take to the roads in protest. We shall see what happens with that one. But coming up, Generation Sick Note. Young people are increasingly blaming mental health issues for not being at work. But is there more to it than simply laziness? Tom?
Well, I guess we'll find out soon. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hectic Saturdays, no-go Mondays, no problem at Euronics. Get products like this Blomberg dishwasher delivered to your door. Find your local